From advertising to software as a service to data.
Across all of our programs and clients, we've seen a 55 to 65% open rate.
Getting brands authentically integrated into content performs better than TV advertising.
Typical lifespan of an article is about 24 to 36 hours.
If we're reaching out to the right person with the right message and a clear call to action, then it's just a matter of timing.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast, a Ben J. Schaap LLC production. In this podcast, you'll hear the stories of world-class marketers that use technology to drive business results and achieve career success. We'll unearth the real-world experiences of some of the brightest minds in the marketing and technology space so you can learn the tools, tips, and tricks they've learned along the way. Now here's the host of the MarTech Podcast, Benjamin Shapiro.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast. Today we're going to discuss marketing in an industry that most people don't think of being marketing related, building homes. Joining us is Russ Stephens, who is the Builders Business Coach and the co-founder of the Association of Professional Builders, which is a leading business coaching company dedicated to improving the residential construction industry for both builders and consumers by providing cutting-edge systems, world-class support, and sales and marketing training. So far this week, Russ and I have talked about how he advises his building clients to double their growth. We talked yesterday about how to build trust and authority without email. And today we're going to continue the conversation talking about some social media hacks he uses to expedite growth. All right, here's the third part of my conversation with Russ Stephens, the Builders Business Coach and co-founder of the Association of Professional Builders. Russ, welcome back to the MarTech Podcast.
Thanks so much, Benjamin. Great to be here.
Excited to wrap up our conversation today. We've covered a lot of ground in terms of talking about the 5 steps you need to take to really focus on your growth. And then yesterday we doubled back and started talking about how to improve your marketing efforts. And it was really a conversation about building awareness. All of the marketing activities that you have to do to build trust before somebody is ready to engage with you to do something like building $1 million home, some of the clients that you work with. As a professional builder's coach, you also rely a lot on social media. So I'm curious to hear some of the hacks that you've found that have helped you expedite growth using social media.
Yes, well, for our industry, which is a high-ticket industry, our focus is all on awareness and lead generation. There really is a little opportunity in terms of making sales via social media. So it's all about the early part of the journey. And for that, it's all about content and using lead magnets. Now, the first tip that I guess I'd really draw everyone's focus to, we're well aware, I think now, that clicks are quite meaningless. 5-10 years ago, all the talk was about cost per click. And now we don't pay too much attention. I think Facebook did some research 3-4 years ago and proved that there was no correlation between clicks and any subsequent event. But now we don't even really place too much emphasis on leads. The focus is all about marketing qualified leads and the cost per marketing qualified lead. And the reason this is just so important for any business owner really is because it will help you to identify the best channels. And all these different channels, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, SEO, typically, if you just look at the cost per lead, it can be very misleading. You need to go a step on and look at the marketing qualified leads. And what we see is 80% of leads that come in, either for our business or our clients who are all builders, 80% of those leads are simply not qualified. They could be SEO companies. They could be people that maybe don't have land and are not in a position to be a client for a builder. None of these are qualified. What we really have to look at is how many of the leads coming in are marketing qualified and base our costs on that figure. That's a really important thing that's transformed our business, and it's made a significant improvement to the builders that we work with.
I think it's great advice. And we talked a little bit about this in one of our earlier episodes, which is you need to focus on building from the bottom of the funnel up. And if you're just focused on driving a lot of volume to the top of your funnel, you're going to be sorely disappointed because you're likely not going to be very targeted. And the more that you can understand what's happening with people that are very close to converting, the more efficient your marketing efforts are going to be. If you could look at some of the data sources of customers you've already had and figuring out what channels they come from, right? Those are not marketing qualified leads. Those are conversions. Then if you don't have that data, you move up into someone that got into the sales process. If you don't have that data, you look at a marketing qualified leads. If you don't have marketing qualified leads data, then you start looking at things like clicks or funnel conversions, other more up funnel type marketing activities. Now, you mentioned a couple different channels when you were talking about how to focus on improving your social media efficiency. 80% of social media leads are not going to be qualified. Makes sense. Are there specialty channels that are specific to your industry? You mentioned Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. I also think of, in your industry, there are other networks like Houzz, Pinterest, even some of the real estate sites like Redfin or Trulia. There's all these other, maybe not social media companies, but other networks that you can use as marketing channels. Do you find that there is a difference in terms of the cost per conversion with a specialty marketing channel as opposed to the broad marketing channel like a Facebook?
In terms of things like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, for instance, the quality percentage is very similar. Slightly stronger on YouTube, but not massively. SEO is probably twice the quality as a rule, is what we see, the quality of the leads coming through from search engine optimization. But when you look at these other specialty channels, now in our industry, there are a lot of different operators that are offering lead generation for builders. We see the quality on those types of services to be beyond poor, to be honest, and bordering on a complete waste of time and money. And that's simply because, one, they're getting the consumer too late in the buyer's journey. So for custom home builders, they need to be attracting the prospect very early in the journey so they can guide them through the design process, rather than picking up someone that's been through the design process and is now looking for a quote, because that leads to the second problem, is that lead generation service simply passed the details on of 3 or 4 different builders, and now they're in a race to the bottom, basically, where the lowest price wins. And that's just a lose-lose for everyone.
So that's interesting to me. My thought is when you go into something that's a little bit more industry specific and using the construction industry, I think people are looking for imagery in Pinterest. I think that, Houzz, where you're looking at design and designers, that those would be more targeted just based on the nature of the platforms. And so I would think that those would be a higher conversion rate, but lower volume, and that the Facebooks and the YouTubes of the world would be massive reach. So you're getting lots of coverage, but you have to sort through less qualified leads to get to someone. You're saying essentially it's the opposite. By the time somebody's on Houzz, they're already pretty far down the path and you haven't built enough credibility with them for them to become your buyer.
I mean, I don't want to badmouth any platforms here in particular. I think Houzz does a great job. They've got a great platform, but none of our members have experienced success from advertising on Houzz, unfortunately.
I mean, I guess it might make sense that Houzz is more about design. So you have to have the house built before you're trying to figure out what the design should be. So it is a little later funnel. I'm just thinking of that as a verticalized type network that I've seen marketers, I have a friend who works in real estate and he invests all of his efforts. He does a little Facebook advertising, but he's on Redfin and Trulia and these other channels that are essentially real estate dedicated networks. And he's able to drive lots of efficiency through those.
Yes, I guess these things work differently in different industries. I think the main challenge that builders have is if they go down the traditional route of quoting jobs where a consumer has got the design done and is now looking for quotes, like any industry really, where if you're looking to build a website, for instance, and you're going to go to 3 website designers and ask each of them to quote, those 3 quotes, no 2 are going to be the same. Yeah, you can go out and get 10 quotes, no 2 are going to be the same. because these are not commodities that are being sold. So you really have to understand what's being provided, and that isn't always clearly articulated in the quote. So in terms of builders, when they end up in that situation where they are just quoting plans, they really are in a terrible situation and a race to the bottom. So the process that we teach builders doesn't just work in residential construction, it works in any of these high-ticket industries, is to work through a consultative process right from the beginning, so that you can keep the project on budget and tailored to what the consumer actually wants to achieve.
So you have to figure out what your channels are, understand your industry, and what your advice was is focus as far down the funnel as you can in terms of figuring out what your marketing qualified leads are, that being your KPI for marketing efficiency. What other hacks or tips do you have for driving social media efficiency?
Well, you've got to know your numbers. So it's very, very important to identify the key KPIs and monitor them religiously every week. And like we spoke about the previous episode as well, you must understand your sales cycle, because that will give you a very clear indication of how much cash flow is going to be required to scale your business. But KPIs, this is something we don't see happening enough. And this isn't just the high-level KPIs where you'd be monitoring the total number of leads being generated and opportunities being created, but digging into the KPIs for each of your Facebook campaigns on a weekly basis and understanding what you're trying to achieve with that campaign and what the most important number is. Now, for instance, we spoke about using long-form video for awareness. And the way we measure that is we'll look at the cost per 95% view, because these particular campaigns are not going to generate leads, but we do know that they build authority over time and build trust. So the way we measure that is to look at 95% views as a cost.
Yeah, I think that working back from your leading indicators is an important thing to understand. You build that learning over time by continually monitoring the data that you have. I know that when someone converts and they're consuming 95% of my videos and they've been doing it for 6 months, that's somebody that's worth investing more in from a lead perspective, right? You maybe are starting to try to capture that email or that contact information a little harder because that person is mature. They've consumed hours of your content. They're ready to buy. Any other last tips for driving social media efficiency?
I would be open-minded on what a campaign can achieve. We've seen multiple times now where we've used awareness campaigns that the primary objective was to drive traffic to the website so that we could pixel those people and retarget them with warm campaigns. But what we've found on a number of occasions is just the process of sending visitors to a website where they consume an article and there'll be a call to action for a lead magnet on the bottom. When we actually measure the cost per marketing qualified lead, we've actually found some of those campaigns to work even better than a specific lead magnet campaign that just sends people to a landing page. So it's unusual because the primary purpose was just to build awareness, but those campaigns have actually turned into fantastic high quality lead gen campaigns as well.
Ride the fast horse, play the hot hand. Whatever is working, you need to try to amplify it and be open to it. Even if your original intent wasn't the one that's working, if you start to notice an awareness campaign driving direct response results, don't fight it, double down, put more into the budget of that campaign, and be happy that you're getting the results that you're getting. I think it's great advice. Russ, I appreciate you coming on the show, talking to us a little bit about marketing in your industry, about some of the tips that marketers can take away from how you help people build custom homes. Thanks for being our guest.
Thanks so much, Benjamin. Love being on your show.
All right, and that wraps up this episode of the Martech Podcast. Thanks to Russ Stephens, builder's business coach and the co-founder of the Association for Professional Builders, for joining us. If you'd like to get in touch with Russ, you can find a link to his LinkedIn profile in our show notes. You can contact him on Twitter. His handle is AP Builders. That's APBBUILDERS, 2 B's. Or you could visit his company's website, which is apbbuilders.com. Just one more link in our show notes I'd like to tell you about. If you didn't have a chance to take notes while you were listening to this podcast, head over to martechpod.com, where we have summaries of all of our episodes, contact information for our guests. You can sign up for our once-a-week newsletter. You can even send us your topic suggestions or your marketing questions, which we'll answer live on our show. Of course, you can always reach out on social media. Our handle is martechpod, MARTECHPOD, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or you can contact me directly. My handle is Ben J. Shap, BENJSHAP. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you want a daily stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, we're going to publish an episode every day this year. So hit the subscribe button in your podcast app, and we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. All right, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.